Thanks everybody for tuning in. I am Ben Coffey. I will be your host for today's session. And with us, we have Mike from the County of LA. Let me share my screen. I made a title slide. Oh, giving away the content here. I made a title slide. Ooh, terrible. This is Mike in his Men in Black outfit. This is when he was working for the CIA undercover, doing water management for the CIA. But Mike is a water manager for the County of LA and is willing to give us his perspective on all things WeatherTrack this morning. Specifically, what we're going to be talking about is his use of the mobile mapping features and the asset manager and getting all of that information tagged and into the system where all of the individual components of all of his irrigation systems live. So let's start out by just talking to Mike a little bit about mobile mapping. Mike, you do this mobile mapping gig pretty much full time, right?
Yeah, I've got two crews right now that are concentrating strictly on just the data collection and pinpointing everything and running through the whole system. Hard thing, in parts is finding everything. You get a valve that's sitting in the ground has been buried for 10 years. So we're doing a lot of wire tracing, a lot of locating, pinning
Metal
things.
detectors.
Oh, yes.
Some guys use metal detectors.
Yeah, so we're working very diligently. It's a great system, gives us a lot of valuable information. The biggest trick is making sure the guys fill out every line on it. Sometimes they start short stepping it a little bit. So having them do that, working on a good Q&A process to follow up on that. That's been the biggest thing right now.
And so give me an idea, once the guys go through and do the physical work of walking the sites and tagging all the assets and getting that information into the system, can you give me an idea how your organization might use that information?
Well, it's extremely helpful, especially, for all of my parts, I only have 11 fitters. So I've got guys jumping all over the place. A great example is when something gets generated as a alert, goes to a work order. Now my guys have the ability to pull up that work order. If they've never been to the site, they go in the lower left hand or lower right hand corner and they hit it and they get GPS instructions out, take them right to that specific valve. Other advantages, we've got pictures. So I've trained my guys, we get a picture of what's in the ground. We also have a point of reference picture that shows that valve with a landmark so they could get to it. And there's also a physical description in there where it is located. So we're saving so much time on not searching for things. And on the back end of it too, when he goes out there, we know what it is. We have a standing procedure. If it's an old valve con, it gets replaced. So the guy can look at the picture, look at the details. This is an 1.5-inch valve con. Make sure he has one on his truck, so he runs out there prepared to replace it and do whatever he needs to do instead of having to go out there, look at it, research it, get parts, and run all over the town. Now it's just a straight shot out there, and we know what we're doing and dealing with and exactly where it is.
And making sure you show up on site with all those ducks in a row, right? All the right tools, all the right parts, not having to scramble, collect the data, and then go out and run errands. Having that stuff all lined up to get there makes these tools increase the efficiency on these repairs significantly.
Oh, yeah. It's a huge time saver.
All right. So that is awesome. Let us jump into a little bit of demonstration. So we can talk about the specifics of what Mike just talked about. We are going to do this entire training today in a live demonstration style. So I've got my WeatherTrack mobile app already primed and set to go. And what you are seeing here, I always start this demo by saying, if you are using these guys up in the sky, WeatherTrack Mobile 1 or 2, these are dated versions, and we still do see people using them. So if you're using those, please update to WeatherTrack Mobile 3.0, which is what we will be demoing today, and all of the features that, especially the mapping features that you see, are in that WeatherTrack Mobile 3. All right, so when we log in to our WeatherTrack mobile app on our smart device, the mapping tools reside on each site. So each site has its own map. So we go over here to the, we select the site that we want, and we can even go into a specific controller if we wanted to. But here in the upper right-hand corner, we see a mapping pin on both of these screens. That's how you get to the site map for this location. So we are going to choose my house because I've spent a lot of time on this map, and there's some features that I like about demoing my house. Most specifically, when I first pull into the map, I think this little blue dot is an enormously valuable feature to understand. This little blue dot is actually me. It's the location of my smart device. So it actually puts me inside the map. And as I'm walking around, I can zoom in and see where I am and see all of the different pins that I've dropped in this map, the location of all of the assets that I've managed. And the idea with the physical location is, as you're walking around the site, you can just stand at the asset that you're trying to tag and drop a pin right on your head, right? So it follows you around the site. You want to drop a pin on a valve box, you stand on that valve box and add a pin. Mike, is that your experience? Is that what you guys are doing?
Yes. It's actually, it works pretty well. There's a few areas where, our signals aren't that strong, so it might be off a few feet, but it's really easy to adjust it and put it back where it needs to be.
Yeah, and I'll show you that step. So what we want to do is, first demonstration that I want to walk you through is adding a pin into this map. Okay, so if I'm out on site and I want to add an asset into my map, it starts by pushing this little plus button right there on the bottom of the screen. The little green plus says I want to add an asset. And the first question it asks is, what kind of asset are we marking, right? And these up here, filtered to the top of the list, are the most common things that I, as a user, pin in maps. So we call these the recent assets. But if you scroll down through, you can see we've got all of the things that irrigation nerds like myself would be marking in these maps, right? Especially important are the 2-wire splice boxes. Like, this is an invaluable tool on 2-wire where the maps are extra important. But you can scroll through and see all of the different available assets. And Mike, what kind of assets are you tagging?
Oh boy, we're tagging pretty much everything: backflows, drinking fountains. I'm actually using the custom tab a lot.
Okay, I was going to say, there's not a drinking fountain tab. How do you do that?
Well, we're adding in and changing the asset name because I have the plumbing shop too. So I'm piggybacking off your system, and I'm adding water heaters, anything that my shop needs to work on and handle. And it's already saved me a few times where I've had water heaters go out. I could pull it up on WeatherTrack, and I've got my model numbers, pictures, and everything I need, so I can see exactly what I'm dealing with. So I've actually forced all my plumbers to get on WeatherTrack and start learning the system too.
I love that. So are you
So
using this custom pin to mark those kind of one-off items?
the one-off things, yes. I'm using the custom pins, and we've developed a thing where we're pretty much all domestic water is going under custom. So we're putting in the isolation valves or adding the asset notes of what it does. We're digging real deep into the weeds on this, even on our station valves.
Okay.
everything. We're using the asset notes to put in there, what's it irrigating, things like this. So on the back end with the guys programming, they could look it up and they could see exactly what's going on with that and transfer these notes into the program
Perfect
for that.
example. So let's pretend on my house, we're going to add a station valve. So I hit that green plus button. It says I want to add an asset. I select the type of asset that I want. We're going to call that a station valve. And notice I'm in my basement right now, so it dropped it on my head in the basement. But this step right here is designed to confirm the location. So to Mike's earlier point, depending on communication signal strength and really a limitation of Google Maps, right? Google Maps puts a flat map on around Earth. So their pins are known to be as much as 10 feet off in any direction. So for every pin, we ask you to just, oh, hey, what did I do there? Go back. That's what I get for running this through my computer. Put your finger on the pin and it will just jump up. When you put your finger on it, you'll see it grab onto your finger. And then you just drag that valve to wherever you want to drop it in the map. It should be close, but we always ask you to confirm the location. And once that asset is in the correct location, we hit the check mark. And this is where Mike is taking down extra credit notes, right? This is where Mike gets total bonus points for using all of these features. So Mike, walk me through what you have your guys doing out there.
Okay, very, very important thing as we're doing it is, getting the pictures, of course, a picture of what's actually in the ground.
So one of the huge benefits is the ability to add photos into this file, right? So I can use the camera on my device. I can take a picture of my WeatherTrack office or me in the background. Use the device on your camera to take, or the device on your phone to take a picture of that asset. And you had a great tip for this. You take multiple pictures. Can you explain why you do that?
Multiple pictures. So we get a picture of the asset itself, and we always have a point of reference picture. One of my guys came up with a genius idea for these valves. He puts an orange cone on it, finds a picture of something in the background, a building, a specific tree, a piece of art, something that he gets a point of reference so that you have that physical site. And also, when we're dealing with backflows or anything, we get the product tags on there. So we have the manufacturing tags also included in here.
That's awesome. A picture's worth 1,000 words, right? And so the up close asset picture shows you exactly what size of valve it is, what type of valve it is, brand, all the plumbing, all that stuff. And then you take a few steps back and you show where that lives in the landscape, right? Just for reference. So oftentimes these valve boxes are hard to find. They're grown over, they're in bushes, they're under pine needles. Just taking the time to have a picture that shows where that location is super important.
Yes.
All right. After picture.
After picture. And this is why I really stress on my guys. We have to fill out every line. Now, picking the station, most of it's all pretty self-explanatory.
On a multi-controller site, we choose the controller and then we choose the station, right? These are the only things that are actually required by WeatherTrack, because WeatherTrack makes it all connect in the background using this information. So those are the only things on this page that it will force you to do. But now I'm going to have Mike tell me how he uses all these other boxes.
Okay, very important here, the asset name. You want to rename each one of your assets and have a uniform method of naming these. Because when you're on the desktop view, this is going to show up on the left-hand side. And if you leave that blank, you just end up, especially if you have a 96 station controller, you have 96 things that just say, valve. So naming it as far as, what controller it is, what station it is, or, whatever works for your department. So doing that's been very important. Under the identifier point, we have been, that was kind of an open field. So we really looked into that. And once we started doing some data dumps and things, we found it's very useful to use that as the assessor, whoever collected the data. That way, it kind of gives me a tool to monitor how well my data collection is going, which guy has weak points, things like that. So we've been using, this field's kind of open. You can do what you want with it, but we've been putting in the assessors' names in this field.
Great.
Description is another one. This is where I've had a few issues with my guys started elaborating a little too much on this. So description, we want to keep this kind of a short description of what it is and what it does. If we need any further elaboration, we do that through the asset notes. Because if we get too long in this area, when you do your data dumps on an Excel sheet, it becomes way too much. So under here, we might just put in, like if it was a backflow, it's a backflow, 8-inch backflow that controls area C. Just a very short description, not too much on it. With the RCV valves, it's very self-explanatory. In this area, we'll say this is a 2.5-inch Rainbird RCV valve. And that's all we really need as far as that goes, because when the guys are looking at the mobile app, that's all the critical information they need. If somebody tries to write 2 or 3 sentences in here, it just overloads it and it's not helpful, and it actually slows down the process.
So do you do that here? Do you do that on the details? Rainbird?
I do that if you go up on, scroll up a little bit. Yeah, well, we have it in the details too, but we do it in the description. So the description is just consolidating the details into there, because when you pull up and look at the app, it'll give you that short little sentence right there off the bat. So it's a little redundant, but it works better for the field user and also from the desktop. When you initially hover over a valve to look at what it is, it gives you that short little description.
That is a great tip right there. That's awesome. And then you move on to the details. You do all this, right?
We do all the details, yes.
Perfect.
The most important thing under details is the installation date.
Okay.
My guys have grumbled and complained about this, but from a deferred maintenance and facility reinvestment background, this date gives us the service life of a valve. So anything we have, this is our greatest indicator of when something should be replaced. We can either do it by the brand if we want to get rid of old valve cones, but if we have Rainbirds that are 25 years old, they're due to be swapped out. So this is something down the road is extremely valuable to make sure we fill out this area.
That's awesome. All right. And then do you use the asset notes at all?
Yes, sir. We do the notes. So asset notes is when we start loading in description. So I'm encouraging the sites. We're doing the initial data. Now, when my site does a station check, I'm encouraging them to add the asset notes at that time. So now they could put down in the note what kind of sprinkler heads are on this system. How many sprinkler heads? Is this a hillside? Is this turf? Is this plants? All the details that we need to set the parameters for our programs, we try to collect in the asset notes.
And then one thing I would add on to that is as you're adding these notes, it automatically does time and date stamp each note and user stamp each note. So that accountability and that chain of command is very clear to see who's participating in the project.
Yes, and also it works out right. We have a lot of stations that are no longer in use. They've been repurposed or taken offline. We add that in the notes because it saves my man. If he's going out there, there's something shut off and he's saying, oh God, this hasn't been used for years, let me restore it. Well, now I've got a note saying, hey, this was discontinued because we're no longer irrigating this area, or we're turning this into a natural area. We don't need this system anymore. We have that note to help justify why it's not in use.
That's great. That's a great use of the technology. All right, so we made it through. We added all that information, and then I hit save, and it takes me into the map. It secures all of that information right where we had it, right? And so it all lives here. So now let's move from adding pins into the map to using the map after it's already got pins in it. And there's a lot of great features and functions and workflow surrounding that, right? So I am out on site. First of all, I find me. I go in here and I find that blue dot, and that gives me. Let me, can't do it on here. Let me bring this back up. There we go. Um, it shows me where everything is, um, and I can see where I am in response to this. So if I'm out walking the site, I can see, hey, I'm walking right by this station. What station is it? This particular icon, the one with the water droplet, is called the station location icon. And it's unique in that you can actually activate the valve manually. So if you're walking the site and you see a water droplet right next to you, that tells you that that's the area where one of your stations irrigates, and you can just turn that right on by hitting the start button. One of the things that Mike described was having his guys that aren't familiar with sites being able to show up right at the location of the item that needs their attention. The way that we do that, let's pretend, for example, that my backflow needed to be turned off. There's an emergency call, water's leaking, we got to turn the backflow off. I got to send somebody out there and to find this single asset, right, that can stop the water from flowing. One of the things that you see here, when I pull up the map, I find the pin for backflow preventer. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a map pin with a circle on it. What that does is it takes this asset and drops it into a Google map and gives you turn-by-turn directions to get to that location, to find that asset as quickly as possible. So that is a great tool that will keep your guys exactly where they need to be, keep them on track, and save them time from just going out and wandering the site looking for this stuff. Another great feature that makes it easy to find stuff is up in the upper right-hand corner, we have a filter tool. Sometimes when you're out on site and you've got all of these pins, it's too much for your eyeballs to take in, right? There's too many pins to actually zoom in on one type of pin. So if I was walking the site and I only wanted to see my station location pins, I would use that filtering tool. If I turn on the filter for station locations, it pulls all of the other icons off of that map and allows me to quickly find what I'm looking for. So another great example is that backflow preventer, right? If I'm out on site and there's 1,000 pins, only one of them's a backflow preventer. If you hit that backflow preventer, then it just filters all of those other things out and gives you a much quicker view of where that backflow preventer lives. To turn off the filters, all you got to do is touch that filter again, and it returns everything right back the way it was. So that's one great tool that I use to make finding stuff on this map easy. Mike, do you have any tips and tricks on using the map out in the field?
Yeah, I just told people go do it. I haven't. Some of my guys have reported back that has been, really easy and helpful. They were apprehensive at first with all the data collection, but now that they're starting to use it, it's actually been pretty good. Myself, I've not used that filter thing, and I just made a note of that to remind the guys that, we're still on the learning curve of adapting to it and figuring it all out. But
another great tool that I use, if the filter isn't what if I'm looking for a specific asset, up in the top right corner, there's a magnifying glass. This is our search feature. So I can go in, and this brings up a list of all of the assets. I can actually use this search feature if I wanted to find the rain sensor, right? Oh, there it is. And then all I do is touch that asset and it takes me to that pin in the map. So both the filter and the search are great ways to really zoom in on a particular asset and use that in your workflow. And then once you have found the pin that you're looking for, oh, sorry. Ooh, get rid of you. That's not what I wanted. Once you found the pin in the map, this little I button is the link to your information. So what Mike was saying is the notes or the description shows up right here. So you can see it on the map with the description and some good information there. But if you want to access that full page of information, you just hit that little I button and it takes you right back here. So you can drill into the details. You can see what type of valve you're using, all of those kinds of things. Sorry, I can't turn my Teams off on my phone, apparently. All right. So, okay. That is kind of the long and the short of using the map out in the field. One last feature I want to show you is if you have a mapping pin in an incorrect location, they are all locked. So if you want to move mapping pins around existing mapping pins, you have to unlock the map using this lock feature and say, I found my rain sensor is on the wrong side of my house, right? I want to put this in the backyard. So I come here and I say, unlock those pins. And then all you got to do is just like you did before, drag and drop the pin into the new location. So no need to worry if the guy before you wasn't as exact as you wanted him to be. You can just go in and refine the data that you're seeing in there. So lots of great tools here on the map that allow you to not only see and get to the individual assets that you manage, but really to keep a running history and give you workflow tools to keep notes and keep track of all of the service that happens on these, so that in again, it doesn't change the way we irrigate, but it does change the way that we manage. And these are tools that are focused on making our field teams as efficient as they can be.
I would stress, on the management side, even with the install dates, putting these unit prices in there, average unit prices for everything. I'm using the data dumps to, develop deferred maintenance projects and planning for future upgrade projects. And when you have that information in there, once it comes out in Excel, if I filter down to all my RCV valves and I want to know a cost, I could just hover over that cell and it'll give me an average and a count of exactly how many valves I have and what the total cost of all these valves are. So if you need to really break down everything and put it into some sort of format where you're, being asked, okay, what's it going to cost to upgrade this system? You have this real quick, easy reference tool to filter down to exactly what you need and give you some averages right off the bat. So it's, on the back end of this, once you get that data in there, if you hit every line in there, it's a little bit of pain, but the payoff on the back end of it is amazing as far as managing and developing projects and looking to upgrade systems or just tone up. I could look at it and tell 30% of my system needs to be replaced because it's out of date. It gives you a lot you could play with on the management side.
And on that note, this one of the things that I've used it for, and I've seen contractors use it to mark all of the individual places where we manage these systems. Sometimes it's mind-blowing to people who don't understand irrigation that you have on, it's just one park, right? But then you put all the pins in and you mark every valve and every isolation valve and every backflow, and all of a sudden it's 300 individual components that you're managing on this site that really kind of was taken for granted. It was not understood the detail with which we maintain these systems.
Well, and it was a really great tool. So a great example is South Coast Botanical Garden. I have two or three standalone weather track controllers. 80% of that park is solar controllers. Each solar controller has maybe about 6 or 8 stations on it. I sent my guys out there. We mapped it. We pinned all the non-controllers. So once we had this map and this overview, I was able to take each one of these controllers. I knew exactly what was on each one. I knew the distance. I was able to develop a plan to consolidate those into like 3 96 station things, 2 wire systems where I don't have to run electricity everywhere, run conduit. So I've got the park is going to go 100% weather track, but I use this tool initially to lay it out and to size it and get everything consolidated to a few central points where I could just upgrade 3 controllers, and now I have the whole entire park on the weather track system with the advantage of all this data.
That's fantastic. A great example of how this all this data comes together to really make us more efficient. Not only the field teams as they're doing their daily thing, but the management over time, right? Which is what we see Mike speaking to a lot of. Um, the expiration dates on certain components, or just the age and the process of maintaining them, to be able to look back and see that is an invaluable add into your water management program. So definitely, please use those mapping tools and keep track of all of that information. The more data you add, the more valuable it becomes. All right, Mike, we are running thin on time here, so I have to get to the standards. All of my first time guests have to face the question, what does WeatherTrack save you?
Oh boy, well, it saves my guys a lot of time. They could, with the advantage of seeing what we have and not having to search for something in the field, it's great. Me as a manager and developing projects, it gives me the data I need to quickly develop projects and quick turnarounds on things. So we do a lot of facility reinvestments, a lot of deferred maintenance. Because we're a political organization, I need to be able to appeal to different funding sources. So this gives me everything I need to write my scope, write my projects, and gives me the data to back these things up. Plus the accountability on the water use, the efficiency. We're able to apply for rebates, get different funding for other things, and justify our water use. Especially with this drought, we use so much water. I need to account for every drop.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And while you were answering, our friend Charles there chimed through with a kudos to you. Says that leveraging the technology to the county's benefit has been a distinct advantage to your tenure. So Charles is a fan of the way that you're doing this, and hopes that you continue. That's awesome.
I'm running with this until they stop me.
There you go. All right. So let me just jump to the what's coming next, what I have on store or on tap for you next week. I am very excited. We are getting into the summertime conversations, the summertime management stuff. And so we will be doing some summertime specifics. Oh, wait, I forgot. Always here to support you. Use our customer support team, our online training tools, and our online resources to find more information about your weather track. And next week, we will be taking on some summertime conversations. We see with the summertime more and more conversations about watering restrictions and drought. So over the next couple of weeks, we will be examining some of those topics. Next week, I will have my friend Chad Mosier on from Las Vegas, Nevada, to talk about programming your weather track for local watering restrictions. Talk about the ins and outs of getting your weather track all programmed up to abide by your local restrictions. So that's what we have on tap for you next week. In the meantime, Mike, thank you so much for making time for us this morning. I certainly appreciate your perspective and your participation.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me.
It is absolutely my. Oh, I have one question that a buzzer beater question that came in right at the end. Is there a way to send text a link to the pin? For example, valve X failed, send a link to valve X. And that's a great question, one that I don't know the answer to. I don't know how to do that. Other than to tell them in the mobile app and have them find it themselves. But I will look into that, Paul, and I will get back to you. All right, Mike, any closing thoughts?
No, just do the work, fill out the data, and fill out every line to your best ability. If you guys get an advantage or get the chance, do a data dump once you've done it. Get that Excel sheet, and that'll be a good tool to help you vet how you collect the data in the field. When you physically see how it comes out on Excel and follow up with quality assurance on the desktop, see how it looks on your desktop. You want to make sure that when you're collecting this data, it's going to look good for all the users and through all the stages of it.
Absolutely.
So that's the big challenge. And I'm actually working on a standard operating procedure for all of this. So
well, we'll have to have you back
that.
when the ink on that dries. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. I'm so looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mike, and thanks everyone. We will see you next week.
All right, thank you.